from the Southern region. Behind me is the Regional Secretary, Paul Maloney. I've got Michelle Gordon, who's another organiser, and we've got Francis Codia, who's one of the reps on the ground. So Paul Maloney will come and address you first, and then I'll come in after if that's okay.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Take your seat.
Yeah.
I can't take your place, I'll take your seat. Thank you very much, Chair. Can I first appreciate the opportunity from behalf of the Trust and the Trust Board to be able to come and speak to you about an issues that affects G&B members and staff within the hospital. Believe me, I haven't got snow in my boots. I'm not in from Russia. We're not a bunch of people who's out to create havoc or problems. We're out to represent our members. In fact, I've got a long association with Kingston Hospital. I represented staff here as a lay representative and worked in the NHS back in the 70s, 80s and 90s, and knew this hospital before the word private was known how to be spelt within the hospital, let alone let it into privatisation. At that time, our staff in here in the hospital used to have a 40-hour week. They worked that over 365 days and 7 days, 24 hours, and they were covered by what you would call decent terms and conditions. Terms and conditions where they could go down to Kingston and get themselves a HP to buy a carpet, to buy a car, to get a mortgage. And they also got weekend pay, they also got sick pay, they were also part of a pension scheme, they were also treated with dignity and respect by the NHS. They also got the terms and conditions that all of their colleagues got in the NHS. Hence the privatisation came in and private contractors were introduced. I do know from my experience of having worked for over 20 years in the NHS, and hence since 1990 representing staff on a regional level, and we represent over 80,000 members across the south of England in the G&B, mainly in public services, in the NHS and local government. The standard has certainly dropped in terms of what the NHS is producing. And the private contractor that's came in has made their profits on the backs of our members, many of whom comes in here first thing in the morning, can't wait to get their shift finished and they'll go off someplace else in order to pay their rent. Many of the people who keeps this hospital clean, who feeds the patients, who pushes the patients around to theatres, have to live 2 or 3 to a room in order to be able to afford to live from day to day. And all we've been asking for is terms and conditions commensurate with those if they were employed in the NHS. And I don't believe it's too much to ask, and I don't believe it's too much for any contractor. If they say they can come in and run the NHS, then please don't do it off the backs of the people who provides the service. They're the people who has got a family to feed. They've asked us to set up a food bank. We've had to write to the Trust in order for them to get their shopping in over the weekend. They've got families to feed, they've got mouths to feed, and the Kingston NHS Trust is not getting the service any cheaper. The only difference is there's a slice of what you pay and what the service is delivered is going to somebody who invests out of the UK and not within the economy of the UK. Now, do I say we shouldn't have any private contractors? We will work with anybody in the private sector. We will work with the Kingston Hospital Trust, we will work with the ISS, and we will work with many other contractors. But the trust is, not the NHS Trust, but the trust through private contractors are saying that we have to make our profits and drive a race to the bottom of terms and conditions for our members. And then what happens is there'll be a bad scandal come out in the trust and they'll get changed and you'll have somebody else come in. This dispute that we're having, it's not alone in this hospital, it's spreading rapidly throughout South London, it's spreading rapidly. It was raised at our CEC meeting yesterday of the G&B, and it's an issue that's travelling, you know, from up and down the country. It's been to questions in the House of Commons because MPs were told by the contractors, you can't raise with your with your public representative. That's a right, a God-given right we've all got, is to contact our public representative, be of whatever political persuasion they are, to be able to contact them and say, come and help me, and here's the plight I'm in. We have had the press being widely reported, G&B are not the union for us. I've got a recognition agreement signed in 1994 with ISS that says G&B represents people in Kingston Hospital, and the name Caterham and the name Porter. They lied to the Secretary of State for Health. Do you think they're going to tell our members the truth? Do you think they're going to tell you the truth when that's the case? There it is signed, and I will, Chair, if you don't mind, to hand you a copy of the recognition agreement that is signed. That is the recognition agreement we've been in, but they have said publicly and to everybody else that G&B has got no place to speak up for our members. Well, I am not going to ask for permission from ISS or any other provider in the NHS to speak up for our members. We will speak up for our members, and our members are not asking to become millionaires overnight. They're asking for something that they can take home with them called a living wage of £10.50 an hour, to be able to say, I want to feed my family, I want to be able to pay my rent, and I don't want to have to rely on going to food banks, and I want to be able to get up in the morning and go to my job with pride. And many of the staff you've got here does their job with pride. They want to see Kingston Hospital being looked after. They're the bedside people, they're the people who feeds, they're the people who cleans, and they're the people who holds the patient's hand when they often come in and direct them in. So I won't take your time any longer. If Helen wants to say a few words, but I'm quite happy to take any questions that you may have. And again, can I thank you for the opportunity to be able to come and address you.
Paul, thank you. Helen.
Thanks.
Again, I'd like to say thank you very much for giving G&B the opportunity to address the Trust Board. We do appreciate it, and our members appreciate it as well. The conditions that workers are suffering on the ground, I mean, I endorse everything Paul said, but the conditions that workers are suffering on the ground is of grave concern to us. I surveyed the members. Their primary concern is about sick pay. The ISS sick pay scheme is so complicated that in fact many of the ISS workers don't even realise that they get sick pay, but it's a credit scheme, and it's the type of scheme that forces the workforce basically to come into the hospital when they're ill. So we're very concerned about the cross-infection risk to the patients that is inherent in this. We had one worker who suffered a stroke. I can provide you with details of this worker after the meeting. He still works in the hospital. He was off for 6 months. He didn't get 1 penny in sick pay from the company, you know, and his colleagues actually to do a whip round for him so he could survive, you know. So that's the kind of thing that's gone on in the hospital at the moment. Again, the poverty pay, you know, people have to commute long distances. You know, they can't afford to look after themselves properly. Again, that will create a kind of an environment where people get sick more easily. So sick pay is our #1 concern at the moment. The other thing that's of great concern that's happening right now is that ISS are disrupting their pay cycles. So what that means, it's complicated what's happening, but what that means in essence is that wages are being held back from workers. Some for a week, some for 2 weeks, some for 3 weeks. And that's why people are coming to us now really concerned. They're saying, we literally don't know how we're going to survive this. And that's why we wrote to the trusts who have the contract with ISS basically to ask if we can set up a food bank on site, because people are so desperate about what this change means. ISS are saying that they're offering bridging loans. These loans have to be paid back. The workers are already really low paid. So this situation is going to affect them, you know, for the next year at least. So this is, again, our grave concern, you know, and like Paul said, it's not just happening in Kingston, it's also happening in Queen Elizabeth Hospital, it's happening in Princess Royal Hospital as well. So we've got a lot of people complaining to us at the moment, you know, that they're just going to be plunged into a financial crisis, basically, by the management methods of ISS, because they don't stand to make, you know, they don't stand to make much savings out of this. We think that if they are making savings, it should be passed on to the workforce, and we're asking, is this change really necessary? Just the upheaval, the crisis it's creating, and people are really, really angry. you know, and demoralised by this change. You know, it's not good for the hospital, it's not good for the patients, you know, and we want this issue, basically, we'd like the Trust Board to ask ISS actually why they're doing this to their workers, if you were willing to do that. So we're very, very concerned about the people working in the hospital. You know, they come in quietly, they do their work every day, but they're coming to the union and telling the union, you know, what's going on. They're scared of management, and management keeps saying, well, why aren't they telling us? Because they're scared of you. They come to the union because they trust us, and they're telling us what all the problems are, and they're telling us the truth. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Helen, Paul, thank you. Sorry, put my microphone on. Thank you so much. The objective of today was to absolutely listen, and I can absolutely assure you we've listened. The one thing I can say categorically is that we value very much the people that work in this hospital, that are certainly working for ISS, but actually serving our patients and supporting our staff. So that's what I would say unreservedly. What we will do is go into a private part of the meeting this afternoon, and we will absolutely discuss this. And then I will ask our Director of Workforce, Kelvin Cheadle, to write a formal response when he has done or followed through the actions that we ask as a board. So, Kelvin, I don't know if you had anything else to add to that.
No, I mean, as Helen and colleagues will know, we've been in a dialogue with ISS trying to reconcile some quite different views. It's quite a complex issue, a series of issues. Of course, we are not the employer in this case, so there are some boundary issues. I think we should carry on the dialogue. I think the discussion in the board this afternoon is called for, and I would like to resume the discussion with Helen and colleagues when we've had that discussion.
Thank you very much. I hope that's satisfactory.
Thanks very much. Like I said, we appreciate this opportunity very much.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you.